if you were to ask me to guess what you want to talk about, it would be the Sonic the Hedgehog trailer.
Exactly, Michael. The Sonic the Hedgehog trailer dropped, and it is the most incredible thing that I have ever seen.
It's... genuinely, this morning I went on YouTube and I got an advert, like obviously a pre-roll advert on YouTube, and it was the trailer. And I was thinking to myself, somebody paid money to have this appear, or I guess it's Paramount. Paramount paid money to have this trailer appear. And I'm thinking, like, I mean, if anything, this trailer's, like, unless they're hoping to get that, like, ironic crowd who are only going to see it for a joke, the trailer's just going to put people off. I wonder if they realize how bad it is.
I mean, like, I don't know how somebody who is a professional trailer maker, I don't know if they have another name, but how somebody can put that together and think, yeah, that's good. You know, Gangster's Paradise, that fits with Sonic the Hedgehog. It all works.
Oh dear, yeah. It's I mean, the weird thing is, there's like a lot of songs about being fast, aren't there? I can't think of any, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, there must have been a lot of better song choices. We're doing Godzilla soon, and I think that has one of the best trailers that I've seen.
Yeah.
And even like this year, the Joker trailer, that was a great trailer. This though is just the complete opposite end of the scale. It's truly, truly awful. And
I really enjoyed the trailer for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2.
Why?
It looked fun. They played that, you know, that song by Run DMC. It's tricky. It's tricky. Do 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 do.
Well, the thing is, when this comes out, it'll be 6 days after the trailer's been released. So some people may have forgotten about it, but just go back and watch it.
Yeah. Nobody will ever forget the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle 2 trailer.
Good. Anyway, let's get on with.
I don't know when I'll cut it, Luke. I'll cut it at some point.
Yeah.
Depending on when I think is the funniest line.
Yeah, I think it's always good to cut it before you're laughing. But sorry, after we laughed. We laugh and then you cut it.
Okay. Anyway. Classic.
Back up, chump, you know Biggie Smalls rips it quick and kicks it quick. You know how black niggas get with the hoods, fatigues, with the boots, with trees. Whipping trees, making crazy cheese. Hitting buckshots at niggas that open spots on the avenue. Take my loot and I'm bagging. Pimping hoes that drive Volvos and rodeos. Flash the roll, make a wet in they pantyhose. Damn, a nigga style is unorthodox. Grip the Glock when I walk down the crowded blocks. Just in case a nigga wanna act out, I just black out and blow the motherfucking back out. That's a real nigga for you.
Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out relatively recently out of the cinema and see if they still hold up upon a second watch. Hey, here's another example of an inaccuracy. Because you know, I think it was last week, I was saying it would be even less true when we do a direct video release, and it will be false when I say we look at films that have come out in the cinema. This time, of course, it's a film that came out on Netflix. I don't even know if this had a theatrical release at all, or it was just on Netflix. Yeah, so there we go. That's another lie. Although this was relatively recent, so there we go. I am your host, Michael, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Luke. And Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about Death Note 2017, the Netflix remake?
Sure thing, Michael. By the way, have you said why we're doing this?
I'm 99% sure I have. But having said that, these are the problems that happen when you accidentally have a corrupted recording the first time round. So you only get some of what you originally had, and you have to go through and kind of fill in the blanks.
Okay. So Death Note is a 2017 American neo-noir supernatural thriller film loosely adapted from the Japanese manga of the same name, which was created by Tsugumi Oba and Takeshi Obata. The film is directed by Adam Wingard and stars as follows: Nat Wolff, Lakeith Stanfield, Margaret Qualley, Shea Wiggum, Paul Nakauchi, Jason Isles, and William Dafoe. It was released on August the 25th, 2017 on Netflix, and therefore, Michael, we don't have a box office, we just have a budget. So do you want to have a guess at that?
Does Netflix not record the number of views?
No, they don't actually. They keep it to themselves. Yeah.
I would like to know, for one thing, because YouTube has that. That's how we know how popular. But that's how we know that Passion of the Christ, our Passion of the Christ review, has 4.5 thousand views. That's how we know these things.
That's just fucking old people who've literally typed Passion of the Christ on YouTube thinking it'd be on there and click on it, and then as soon as we start talking, click off.
Yeah. But we haven't got any that many dislikes. Anyway, okay. Importantly, so the budget. I'm going to guess. Okay, I'm going to guess it's 30. What is it? I know this. It's 35 million.
It's 40.
It was 40. Yeah. Okay. There we go.
Yeah, 40 million. So yeah, and obviously you didn't make anything. And that's the thing. Like, I do wonder with these kind of things that Netflix does, like, because people aren't subscribing because of fucking Death Note, are they? So, I mean, how much money do you think they made off this?
I think they made it just out of a purely altruistic desire to spread aesthetic good to the world. They thought
makes
this is a piece of art. They were kind of like the Medicis funding Leonardo.
That makes sense. Anyway, Michael, did you like Death Note?
Well, I hate to be a bit controversial here, Luke, but I thought this was the best American remake of Death Note by Netflix ever.
Is that a yes?
I hated it.
Yeah.
What do you think, Luke?
I kind of loved it. Obviously, we've been doing a lot of good / competent movies recently, and it's just nice to see such a shit film with so many flaws. And it's entertainingly bad as well, I think. So, yeah, I loved it because it was bad.
I mean, I will agree, because as you know, Luke, I've been being very diligent with my film watching recently, and it's been a bit of a drag when I'm just watching all of these well-made films that I mean, they're good, but at the end of the day, they're not as interesting as these films where you can just be like, wow, just good job, people. You really because messing things up, it can be an art form in a way. It's like that martial arts style drunken fist where you kind of just stagger around and end up accidentally beating. You remember those Jar Jar Binks Sith theories where it was like, everyone's like, oh, actually Jar Jar Binks, he was secretly operating things behind. That's kind of how I feel about really bad films. They're like the Jar Jar Binks Siths of filmmaking. Anyway, do you have any nitpicks?
Yes, Michael, I do have nitpicks. How many do I have?
8.
Yeah. What, you have 8?
Yeah, I know. Actually, no, I have 9. There we go.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I could have had more. And some of these 7 are like 2-in-1s. But yeah, this is a movie with a lot of flaws, basically. So if you're looking for nitpicks, you can definitely find quite a lot of them.
Yes.
Yes. So I guess I'll go first then, shall I?
Oh yeah, because you have fewer, of course, and that's how we do it.
That's how we do it.
Dun, 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 dun.
So first up, my first nitpick: 95 rules. Really? That many? I know you watched the anime, Michael. How many rules are there in the anime? Do you have any idea? I
am really confident there's less. I'll tell you why I'm slightly confident there's less, actually. It's because in the anime, I guess because I know you've seen some of it, they have little title cards at the beginning of each kind of part, which shows you a rule. So it's kind of before the advert break and after the advert break, they have little title cards that show you a rule and kind of says, blah, blah, blah. And they get through them relatively quickly. So obviously, there's one advert break per thing. So that's 2 either side of it. And I think there's about somewhere between 30 and 50 rules in the anime.
Wow.
So they almost doubled it.
Yeah, definitely. Next nitpick. Okay, the main character's name is Light. So that I don't know a lot about Japanese culture or Japanese names. Maybe Light is a name in Japan. I'm not sure. But the thing is, there is no one in America, no white kid at least, who's called Light. I'm pretty confident in that. Like, you changed the last name. Yeah. You changed Misa's name. She's called Mia. Just change Light's name. It just sounds so fucking stupid.
Well, I had planned out that in my remake I'm going to do for the BBC of this, my adaptation, I'm going to call him Liam. That's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say, if I was making it, I would call him Liam. It's just sorry, go on.
I was going to say, it's kind of weird, so I would think, what they could also do is, they could do one of those things where it's like, I bet there's a name that we don't even, is really popular, and it's like Hebrew for light or something, So they could have just called him that, because that would make sense. Because when you think about it, I'm assuming in Japan, the reason why Light's like a name, it's kind of like, nowadays you got, I'm trying to think of examples. So there's like Hope. Hope is a name. And obviously, for a Japanese person, if you had somebody and they were called Hope and they translated that name Hope into Japanese people would be like, well, that's weird, isn't it? Having a character called Hope. How silly. But of course, for us, we kind of just don't think about it. So, it's kind of like, that's the problem, isn't it, Luke?
That is the problem. Anyway, next up. Okay, so this is this is considered a standoff. in the beginning when Light manages to prove to Mia that the Death Note works. There just happens to be a standoff happening right at the same time in Seattle where he can prove to Mia that, this book can kill people. So incredibly convenient for Light.
Just shows how much of a problem there is with crime in America.
Yeah, world is rotten. Next nitpick, another convenience nitpick. Isn't it convenient that Light's dad is the person who's helping run the Kira investigation? And
actually, it's very inconvenient for Light.
Well, actually, it's not, because it allows him to access the police files.
Yeah, that is true, actually. Yeah, I know. I realized that as I was saying it.
Yeah, you're an idiot. No,
I'll leave.
Here's the thing. It's a nitpick in the anime as well. It's one of those things where it's in the anime, it's like, okay, that's just a bit coincidental. But
okay.
So that's that.
Maybe though the Force did it.
Maybe.
No, but seriously, okay, maybe. I'm just I was going to say, maybe the Shirogami was like, this will create maximum chaos if I give it to this kid who happens to be the son of a PD and is also I don't know if he's technically a PD. I don't really know what a PD is, but
I'm a detective, I thought.
Oh, okay, yeah, that sounds about right. So whatever he is, though, a police constable, that's it, a PC. You give it to him.
I think he's a bit higher than that.
Yeah, a commissioner. Let's say he's a commissioner.
Commissioner, okay. Yeah, well, we'll get onto that a bit later. Next up, Watari. So in this version, Light manages to control Watari, even though he only knows one of his names, which is Watari. Obviously, you need two names, and everybody has two names. I assume everybody has two names in the world, at least. How can he control Watari with only knowing one of his names?
Yeah, I mean, what are he? Some kind of psychics?
Next up. Okay, so this is a nitpick on the Death Note, and maybe you can shed some light. So, okay, I thought that, Light is the keeper of the Death Note, yet Mia can write in it without his permission. What does being the keeper of the book mean then, if it doesn't mean you can write in it? Like, does it mean you get to talk to Ryuk? What's the benefit of this?
Well, in the anime, which it doesn't follow in from the film, anybody who touches the Death Note can see Ryuk. Whereas, of course, in this, only the keeper of the Death Note can see Ryuk. I think in the anime, the only benefit to being the official possessor of the Death Note, there are two kind of benefits. The first one is I think you can't be killed by a Death Note if you're the possessor of Death Note, but that might not be true. I think it's implied at several points it's true. But the second thing that it's sort of a benefit is that, or it's not necessarily a benefit. It's more like if you lose the Death Note, that's a problem. Which is if you no longer become a possessor of a Death Note, so you were a possessor and then you no longer become one, you lose all of your memory of ever having owned that Death Note. And therefore, I guess you could say, so I guess, obviously that's not a benefit to being an owner, but it kind of shows how if you cease to become an owner, that's a problem. And again, that's not carried on into the film, so who knows?
Well, there you go. So next nitpick. At the end of the movie, there are a bunch of cops in heavy armor chasing down Light. But why? It was his dad who said, we've got L who's armed and dangerous. Make sure that my son, Light, is kept safe. Yeah, they're all rushing towards Light like 20 police cars, all with fucking guns and like riot gear. And I'm just like, well, why are they doing this? It's like there was another part of the script, or not another part of the script, another script entirely, which said the police are hunting down Light at the end of the movie, because it just doesn't make any sense.
No, yeah, I mean, genuinely, the first time I watched it, I actually thought the police were hunting down Light. I wasn't completely paying attention because I, never do. But I genuinely did think the police were hunting down Light. And as the second time I was watching, I was like, hold on a minute, it does seem like they're hunting him down. And that's why I thought that. But actually, he does literally say, help, my son's, being attacked. You need to protect him. And, the police show up. I feel like it's it was supposed to be a clever parody of the police. They'd show up and they'd shoot Light dead. And then they go, now L can't get him.
Yeah, and speaking of L, so obviously he's chasing Light, which we'll get onto later, but he gets captured, and then he's allowed to go to the Ferris wheel and get out of the police car, because obviously he sees the note being burned. So he's told, the cops are told he's armed and dangerous, but he's allowed to just
get out.
Yeah, get out and just see.
Yeah, just go out of goosey.
Yeah. So yeah, that's another one. But yeah, that's all my nitpicks, Michael. I could have got more, but there are a lot of them are in the plot, basically. But
yeah, I agree. So Mine are okay. Number one, there are no apparent consequences for the classroom that Light was in being completely trashed, which you'd think would be something someone brings up, like, hey, you were left in detention for a couple of minutes. They came back and all of the shelves had been pulled over and there was paper everywhere. No one brings it up.
Maybe he cleaned it up quick.
Yeah, or maybe he kind of was like, oh, I freaked out because I saw somebody's head get exploded by a ladder, and somehow they didn't have a skull. You know what? That could be one right there. Actually, I never brought that up, but the fact, I don't know, can a ladder from like a car, like how fast could that car have been driving in a school zone? And how blunt should that ladder have been? I mean, really, it should have kind of just got a hurt jaw. The more I think about it, the less sensitive. Like, because, cars don't drive that fast. I think a ladder would have to be traveling pretty fast to decapitate you. Anyway, it doesn't make sense how little of the apple Ryuk eats. Now, of course, in the anime, Ryuk eats the whole apple. That's a famous part of Ryuk's character. I would argue it's an indispensable part of Ryuk's character. But also, it's just this meme I see in a lot of Hollywood films where, like, for some reason people, they eat apples and they end up having this kind of like hourglass shape. But when you really eat an apple, it doesn't have an hourglass shape. If anything, it has a slightly convex shape because you kind of eat, it's closer to the center at the top and bottom, and then in the middle there's more core. So it kind of ends up actually sticking out in the middle. Okay, so next one. They're talking so casually in the library where she's like, hey, these people have put this thing up for the people they want Kira to kill. And you, as Kira, could kill these people. You, Light Turner, are Kira. And therefore you could use your Kira abilities to kill all of these people in the library. And then later on, this is a different nitpick, but a related one, so I'll put it in now. They literally are shouting. He's shouting up the stairs in the school, just running along shouting like, Ryuk killed all of those agents who were investigating me, Light Turner, for being Kira. Just because I'm Kira, they're investigating me, Light Turner. And Ryuk, my death god who I have, killed them all.
That was great, yes. They're not the smartest, are they? Which is obviously ironic considering the anime, but yeah.
Yes. And okay, so this one's another one. L has no basis for knowing that Kira needs a face as well as a name, since he didn't actually show his face or reveal his name. Therefore, it's entirely possible that he just needs one or the other. The sentence he makes no sense. He kind of goes out. Yeah, he goes out with his face obscured, doesn't get killed, and then says, this proves that he can't kill based on the face alone. It's like, he didn't show his face. He didn't show him your face.
L is making a lot of assumptions throughout this movie. And it's kind of like, oh, it's meant to show how smart he is deducing all this, but like you said, it's just based on faulty logic.
Yeah, and you know what they say, when you assume, you make an arse out of Hume and E.
That's what they say.
Okay, and this is very much building on from the next one, which is he's assuming that Kira wouldn't refrain from killing him because Kira only kills criminals. Because, of course, in the anime, Kira has already demonstrated at the point where he kind of starts interacting with Light, with L, that he's willing to kill people who go after him. So it's already established Kira will kill people who go after him. But in the film, it's entirely possible that he's literally a vigilante, and therefore he's only interested in killing bad guys and criminals. And therefore, the fact that L is going after him doesn't necessarily mean that Kira would even try to kill L. And obviously, if you think about most vigilantes like Batman, Spider-Man, Superman, they don't kill the law-abiding citizens who go after them. They only kill or beat up or arrest the criminals. So again, a completely baseless assumption. So many in that one scene. So Watari finds a camp that is supposed to be hidden. He says it was not meant to be found by anybody to just go looking for it. And then he literally just kind of walks and seems to have no problem getting there.
Yeah, he finds it quite easily, doesn't he?
It's a decent 2-hour walk away. It was never to be found.
And my calves really hurt after 30 minutes.
It's slightly uphill. And then, okay, so this one's a big one, I think. So what's her face? What's her name? Mia is like, hey, I've written your name down in the thing, so you need to give me the death note so I can burn it. And then she says, that's why I didn't let you burn Watari's name, because that way we would still be able to burn yours. Now, first of all, it seems to be pretty obvious that the rules would be you're allowed to burn one page per owner of the death note. So each owner of the death note is allowed to burn one page. Therefore, he could have burned Watari's page and then given her the death note, and she could have burned Light's page. But then it gets even more stupid, because if that would have happened, it would have made much more sense, because then it could be like, hey, you burned Watari's page, now you can't burn any other pages. I've written your name in there, therefore you need to give me the death note, and I'll get to burn a page, and I'll burn your name. But as things stand, she's like, you haven't burned Watari's name, therefore he can just burn the Death. He doesn't need to. He no longer needs to give it to her. So it makes absolutely no sense. It literally makes the opposite to sense. Because, if he would have actually burned Watari's name, then he would have to give her the note so she could burn it. But since he hasn't burned Watari's name, he can just burn it himself. So literally nothing she says makes sense. And it's just bizarre. Again, I don't know, maybe... I was almost going to say maybe there was some kind of, again, problem with the script being edited and they, redrafted it and they didn't take into account something. But even then, it just doesn't make any sense. Anyway, and then this one's the last one. Why didn't he command the guy to put the book under his pillow rather than on his chest? So, of course, Light... he comes up with a master plan before falling into the water and obviously falling into a coma. He tells a guy to get the book from the shore, write in a load of criminal names over a couple of days, and then place the book on Light's chest while Light is in a coma. And conveniently, nobody comes in while the Death Note is on Light's chest, and then he obviously gets up and puts it under his pillow. But really, it would have made much more sense if he would have actually commanded the guy doing the whole retrieving thing to put it under his pillow. Therefore, it would have saved him loads of problems.
He wanted to be found, Michael.
Yeah. Yes. All right. So that's the nitpicks then, and I guess now we move on to the real business, don't we? The meat.
Yes. Well, firstly, I think before we dive into the plot and explain it all, we need to talk about the fact that this is an American adaptation from a Japanese piece of work. So it was a manga first. That was, I think, in 2003. And then it was a TV show, which is what you've watched, and I've watched like 6 episodes of it, which came out in 2006 and 2007. So, and as well, I think Death Note is one of the most beloved animes of all time, and it's one of the most famous animes of all time, hence why Netflix bought it and wanted to do a remake of it. And so, how did they do, Michael? Let's not talk about how did they do. Let's talk about the fact that it is an American adaptation. Is it bad just inherently that it is an American adaptation?
Yeah. Well, I think the weird thing about this one is that it didn't seem as bad for me, partially because it's such an obvious departure from the actual story. It almost feels like a completely different story. But having said that, of course, what they do, it is a Japanese property, and this film has hardly any Japanese characters. Obviously, they could have set this film in Japan. But I think it kind of makes sense they didn't do that since there's already Japanese films based on Death Note. So they made an American adaptation for a Western audience. That's fair enough. But it's set in the Pacific coast of America, where they have lots of Japanese people, and yet none of the major characters are Japanese except for Watari, who is not Japanese in the actual thing.
He's not. Yeah, I was thinking that he was obviously white in the original movie. Oh, no, the original anime, sorry.
Yeah, and L is obviously half white or something. So, there's weirdly, actually, I guess part of the reason why it can be excused that there is some quote-unquote whitewashing is that, obviously, a lot of the characters in the anime are obviously white. You've got these American FBI agents over there, European investigators, all that kind of stuff. So, fair enough. I think also it should be said I approved of the decision to have L be played by a black person in that it did add some diversity.
That was when what the internet was mad at most.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the internet wasn't very happy about that. But that's the thing. Ultimately, if the BBC made Death Note and they had it set in London, then you'd have some South Asian actors, you'd have some black actors, you'd have some European actors, and you'd have some East Asian actors because London's a very diverse place. In general, I think it makes sense to have the if you're adapting something and you're bringing it in this adaptation to a new country, you should have it reflect the ethnic makeup of that country. Having said that, if it's a Japanese property, you would think maybe Japanese people should be slightly overrepresented, if anything, and not totally absent, pretty much, apart from obviously the character of Watari, who is probably the most minor main character, and obviously was not white in the original, so very strange.
So here's the thing: the whitewashing thing. I guess because it's an American adaptation, and most people in America are white. It's not the worst thing ever, but certainly, they could have put more Japanese people in this. I don't. So obviously, some fans of Death Note, or some anime fans in general, they had a problem with there being an adaptation in the first place before this movie was even released. And I would not agree with that because I think you can do an American adaptation of this and it could have been good. You can do an adaptation of anything from another culture, and as long as you get why this property is popular. Obviously in Death Note it's meant to be a battle between two intellectual heavyweights in Light and L. But obviously, in this movie, they reduced it to a teenage horror.
It's like Final Destination, basically, is the way it's set up.
Yeah,
It's like,
it is.
which is not, not bad in a way. It's just, I mean, Final Destination is harmless fun, but when you're dealing with something which should be so much more intelligent, it's pretty awful.
So that's the thing. I'm not against like adapting movies from other cultures, and maybe fans of like anime just aren't as well, but they've been conditioned because there's been so many bad adaptations of anime by Hollywood, or I don't know if Netflix made this out of Hollywood. I assume they did.
Yeah,
but
let's just say.
Yeah, there's been so many bad adaptations by American filmmakers, shall we say, of Japanese properties that they inherently think it's going to be bad, and this movie proved them right completely. They thought it was going to be shit, and they proved them, all these anime fans, completely right.
So really, the anime fans should be thankful, because they get the pleasure of being right, and that's something that no film can replace, that feeling of being right.
Yeah. So again, like, I'm not too bothered about the fact there is an adaptation, and again, maybe the anime fans wouldn't be if they knew it wasn't going to be bad. If they knew that it wasn't going to be so horrendous. Maybe I don't even think they thought it was going to be as bad as it turned out to be. And that's the sense I got when it was released. But yeah.
But I'll tell you what's a harsh truth, Luke. See, I was when I was watching this, when I watched the original anime, I was thinking there are a lot of people who they kind of say, this film is terrible because the anime is so perfect and fantastic in every single way, and this film just squanders, how perfect it is. Whereas I was watching the anime and I was thinking to myself, actually, what really annoys me about the film is that when I was watching the anime, I was thinking there's loads of ways that you could take this really interesting premise and the really interesting themes explored by that premise and improve it, because my general criticism of anime and a lot of Asian cinema in general is that a lot of the acting and the characterization and the dialogue is very on the nose and one-dimensional.
Yes.
I don't know, what do you think about that?
No, I do agree. I often find when I'm watching anime, or when I watch these 6 episodes and just watching clips off YouTube or whatever, like, the characters always seem to be explaining what's happening, like, and there's no room for subtlety at all. They're always like, oh, this character, like, they're having a thought in their head, like, oh, this character's doing this, so therefore I must do this. And it's explained to you like you're stupid. Like, there's just absolutely no nothing left to interpretation. Everything is laid out for you, and that has been my problem with anime. It just doesn't seem to flow naturally.
Yeah, and it's especially annoying with this because there are really interesting themes where it would be nice if if there was a media that introduced these themes and kind of made you think about them, but obviously made you think about them rather than just saying, I'm Kira and this is my motivation and this is, all the philosophical complexities of it and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, thanks, Kira, but I kind of wanted to think about that for myself, mate.
Yeah, they always have to spell it out for you. Like, that's I mean, whenever I'm watching anime, it's just like the characters, they always like there's this scene where one character is facing off from another character, and like whoever the main character is, they're like thinking in their head, and it's like 30 seconds of just thinking about what they're going to do or how they're going to do it, and it's like, again, just it does treat you like you're stupid, which is weird because obviously the themes explored are quite intelligent. So maybe it's just Japanese style filmmaking.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, because I get recommended a lot of or I say I get recommended, I don't personally get recommended. I see a lot of things saying, oh, this is a really good film out of, Japan or Korea or China. And I watch it, and there is an element of it being good, but then at the same time, there's a lot of problems. I watched a film very recently, I rewatched it, called Train to Busan, which is a very critically acclaimed Korean zombie film. And you watch it, and the 3 main characters are, there's a dad who's a businessman, and he has no time for his children. And he's the main character, obviously. And then there's a guy who's really strong, and he's got a hot wife, and he's the hero, and he's always being honorable. And at the end, he heroically sacrifices his life. And then there's a guy who is so evil that he literally has like a moment that's almost on like a cartoon where he tells his lackey assistant to go check a room, and then he pushes him into the room to distract the zombie so he can run away. And literally every single character is just so one-dimensional, and every single line of dialogue is just like, the dad's like, I've got lots of work to do. I can't spend time with you. I've got to work. And the guy's like, Dad's always got work. It makes me sad. And it's just like, a bit more subtlety would be nice. And I genuinely do find that with a lot of, Asian cinema. And I think it might actually be because in a lot of ways, Asian cinema isn't quite as old as, for example, American cinema, and I guess British cinema as well. And therefore, it's something that will probably develop with time. Obviously, there's different cultures, different ideas. And like you say, yeah, it does seem to be kind of a cultural thing that I would like to see go.
I mean, I think back to movies from like the 80s or the 70s, and a lot of the characters there, I think you'd agree, were quite simple.
Yeah,
in Hollywood. So yeah, that is something that I think maybe Japanese cinema, or I shouldn't say Japanese, East Asian cinema will improve with, because I hope they do, because that it does make it hard to watch the anime when everything's slow paced and everything has to be explained. It's frustrating, basically.
No, yeah, I agree. Tell you what, Luke. Now we've reached the point where we're almost at the premise, or we're at the premise.
Have we finished with the bashing anime segment now?
I think we have. I think we've covered everything we originally covered.
Yeah.
And also, I don't think. Actually, no. There is one thing I wanted to say, so I'll just say it now. But I think it's important to bring this up because we're not one of those people who hate this film because it's not the anime. I watched a review for this film, and I literally couldn't watch it because the entire review was like I saw it's like an hour and a half long in total, and every single criticism the guy had was just, this is different from the anime. And it wasn't even things that were like objectively wrong. Like at some point it was literally like, this guy's wearing, or so it was like in the anime it was a dark day, but in this day it's really bright, and I don't like that. In the anime it has this dark foreboding music, but in this the music isn't dark and foreboding. I didn't like that, and it's literally just like so tedious to watch because it's very clear that the person's essentially saying that the only thing they would have accepted is literally a carbon copy of the anime, but with real life actors, which.
Yeah,
which we're not doing. Yeah, we were willing to give an adaptation a try.
Yeah, exactly. Give it a chance. Like, what's the point in doing an adaptation if you just literally copy it like scene for scene? Yeah, there isn't much point in that unless obviously to make money for an American audience. But obviously that wouldn't be what we would like out of a movie.
Yes. Yeah. And speaking of the movie, I think it's time that we spoke about the premise.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty self-explanatory. Death Note. But anyway, so the plot follows a student called Light Turner, who lives in Seattle, who finds a mysterious supernatural note known as the Death Book, which can kill anyone whose name is written in its pages. After being intrigued with its godlike abilities, Light eventually decides to trigger a worldwide massacre of criminals and terrorists in order to change the world into a utopian society without crime, under the alias of a godlike vigilante Kira, eventually attracting the attention of an enigmatic international detective known only under the alias of L, who attempts to fight Light and end his reign of terror.
Yes, so that's the premise. Yeah, if you write somebody's name in the book, then they die. The one thing you didn't mention is you also have to know what their face looks like, although that isn't actually ever relevant to this film, I don't think, but whatever. I don't
think it is. But yeah, so first up then, how the Death Note is found. Right, this was my first problem with this movie. It just drops down from the sky, and it's kind of a problem with the anime too. Like, there's no reason for it. It just dropped down from the sky, out of nowhere. Like, Ryuk should have to have it drop down next to Light because he wants to be entertained. That's clear throughout the anime and through the movie. He's like, he doesn't like to be bored.
He's like the Joker.
Yes, he is like the Joker. No, that's a good comparison. He just wants chaos. He's bored. In the anime, he's in the Shingami realm. And I think that's what it's called, Shingami.
It's called the Shirigami.
Shirigami realm, and he's bored. So he says right at the start, like, "Oh, I just dropped it randomly." But I don't know why you couldn't just have him drop it next to Light Turner, because he's just looking around and he's thinking, "Oh, it'd be fun if this guy who has said the world is rotten and he's intelligent, maybe if he could do something interesting with it." So yeah, that was a problem.
Yeah, I will say, actually, I think it was a good idea to, I mean, not just for time, but obviously partially for time, to not show the Shirigami. Obviously, the anime opens with the Shirigami realm, and we, see this weird mystic spirit. But I think, like, part of it, on, like, a less kind of time-concerned area, is that I think it would work better if, the Shirigami realm was just left up to the imagination. So I will say, I don't have a problem with that. Like, I think it was a good adaptive decision to not have the Shirigami realm actually depicted.
Yes,
and just kind of have it be more. Although actually, I didn't really hint at it at all either. So
no, the issue is the Shirigami is a very Japanese concept, and so if you're doing the American adaptation, like, you can't leave Ryuk out of the American adaptation. So you got to have him in. But yeah, the Shirigami thing is very Japanese, so it makes sense to just not talk about that. At all.
If if I were going to adapt this, I think I'd have the Shirigami look less weird. I think I'd just have them look like human beings, because it's kind of like. I mean, I don't know if we've got a section where we're going to talk about this, but the Shirigami just look ridiculous in live action. I mean, they kind of look ridiculous in the anime too, but you just got Willem. Like, the thing is, Willem Dafoe. Funny enough, Willem Dafoe would look much more terrifying. Like, if I just was, in a class and I suddenly saw Willem Dafoe disappear, I'd be scared. But if it was that guy, I'd be like, phew, at least it's not Willem Dafoe.
Yeah. I mean, they do look ridiculous, but whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, yeah. But yeah, apart from that, not really much to say about that, is there?
Yeah, no. I think.
Well, actually, I will say, considering, I mean, this is going to be a recurring theme, but like the fact that they were adapting a 37-part long, 20-minute an episode anime. Number one, I should have mentioned this on the adaptation, but I'll bring it up now. It's kind of weird that they made an hour and a half film, because a lot of films, they can be 2 hours, and you'd think if you're adapting a massive piece of thing, you'd be like 2 hours. I mean, this is a complete aside, but when M. Night Shyamalan directed Avatar: The Last Airbender, he made it an hour and a half, which is incredibly short. Not only, number one, for a fantasy action adventure film. Usually your fantasy action adventure films are 2 hours, if not 2.5 hours.
Number two, the world, haven't you?
Yeah, number two, each season of Avatar: Last Airbender is 20 episodes long. So he made anyway. So it doesn't make sense why they didn't make it 2 hours to kind of give themselves a bit more wiggle room. But number two, they had like such a it's like a slow motion opening, which, if they were, again, you'd think they were concerned about time constraints, but I guess seeing as they weren't really trying to adapt the anime, they didn't really actually need to worry about time constraints because they were just making up their own thing. But, it's just a bit weird that it was so slow with like that music scene and doing cheerleading and all that stuff. Anyway, good.
Yeah. So, okay, next up, I think we should talk about how Light reacts to the Death Note in general. So, okay, so the first scene with the Death Note, we see Ryuk. And so obviously he's in detention, and Ryuk is there.
Yeah.
And I don't want to talk about his philosophy, so I just say like the scene with him experiencing Ryuk, it just goes by like so fast.
Yeah, I actually have a positive about the film. Right. Okay, so a lot of people don't like this. Is I mentioned I tried to watch a review, and it was literally just the guy complaining about every single difference. One thing he brought up is he said, he didn't like how Light behaved like a little bitch when he first saw Ryuk, and he kind of like screams and runs away, and he's like panicking at the door. And he was like, but in the anime, Light is just really calm. And I was thinking to myself, actually, I think I prefer. Obviously, this is one that I'm not going to say this very often, but I actually prefer that Light reacts like a real human being, because in the anime, it's kind of weird that Light's just like, it's a Shirogami. I've been expecting to see you Shirogami.
His initial reaction is okay. I think the screaming is hilarious, though. It is. I think, yes, it's a better reaction, but not by much. I'll agree with you, but then in the anime, you can see Light questioning the Death Notes.
Yes.
And asking questions about it. In this fucking Netflix version, he doesn't ask any questions to Ryuk. He doesn't like say, "Who are you? Where have you come from?" He just goes along with it. He just writes the name in the fucking book, and then it was like, "Oh, I'm not going to question anything. I'm just going to do it."
I find it so weird. They never bring up the "don't trust Ryuk" thing. Yeah, even though it's like right there. And number one, it doesn't even really come up again in the film. Apart from like the occasional moments where Ryuk's shown to be a bit like dodgy in terms of his allegiance, but there's no like massive betrayal moment, which is very strange. And number two, it's just like, what about this bit where it says "don't trust you"? And he's like, "Come on, are we really going to worry about that?" I was like, "What? Yeah,
yes, you've got a fucking magical Death Note, and it says "don't trust you." So like he just doesn't seem to, and as well in the anime, Light kind of seems. He kills his first person, which is a guy who's taken someone hostage in Tokyo, and he says no, it's just a coincidence. It can't be real.
He seems very skeptical.
Yeah, he's skeptical, and as you would imagine, somebody would be if they've got this magical death book. But that is not the case in the Netflix adaptation. Light doesn't show any like skepticism at all. Like he immediately believes that what happened outside with the guy getting his head decapitated by a fucking ladder. That was him. And then later he doesn't question it. Then he just writes the name of the criminal who killed his mum. So he just seems to go along with it, which compared to the anime is just so much worse.
Yeah, it's a lot worse. Anyway, so next thing is the Mia, or Misa, as she's called in the anime.
Yes.
So I want to just start off with the obvious thing. It's so crazy and just completely bizarre that he decides to share this with a relatively random girl.
It's fucking mental, Michael.
It almost feels comedic because it's like I don't know. I mean, I really want to believe that there was like some attempt to like, I feel like they must have known that this was kind of a joke, because he's literally like reading the Death Note out in public, which that could be a nitpick in itself, to be honest. I mean, maybe you could say he's just dumb and that's like it excuses him, but even then, like, I mean,
that's something Light
Yes.
in the anime would never do.
Yes, exactly. And you think like he'd at least like disguise it with, a magazine or something, kind of read it like that. But anyway, and then the girl walks up to him and she's like, what's that? Blah, 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 blah. And then she's like, what are you reading? He's like, I can't tell you. And she's like, okay, I'll leave. And he's like, do you really want to know? And he's like so eager to tell her. And then obviously he does tell her and she's just like, fine. Okay. Yeah. You're pretty lucky. I mean, maybe he's just a really good judge of character. Maybe he's just like, oh yeah. I mean, we say Light's dumb, but maybe he's really good at telling when a girl will be completely okay with you being a serial killer.
Okay, so the thing with this Mia character, and I think because I'd never watched an episode in the anime with Misa in it, so you can talk about how she is compared to the anime, but just in the Netflix adaptation, this girl is a fucking psycho. And here's the thing, I'd kind of be okay with her being like this if she was a big fan of Kira, then Light showed her that he was Kira.
It's the classic. That's the classic Spider-Man formula.
Yeah, the girl that Light happens to like is already so like I don't know why Light happens to like this particular girl or why this particular girl happens to like Light, but they do. But yeah, she just happens to be like a deranged murderer who's a psycho. When you show her this death book, she doesn't get freaked out.
She's more crazy than Light, which is even more bizarre. It's not just like she's like, oh, I understand. It's actually like she's just insane.
When I haven't seen the anime, when I watched it the first time, I expected her to get freaked out, and I was like, when she wasn't, I was like, whoa, that's a red flag right there. Like that's a big red flag. Yeah, she's so fucked up. Like she's like a mini fascist. She wants to kill his dad. Like she openly like grabs the fucking death book, ready to kill his dad. Like maybe if that's not a red flag for Light, what is? Like she's such a fucking psycho that she's ready to like kill his only family. Obviously she kills all the FBI agents as well.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that. It is to me, it's so stupid that Light didn't work out. That it was obviously her who killed the detectives, because literally what happens is she's like saying, Kira should, or I guess she says, you should kill these detectives. I hate these detectives. You need to kill them. And then he's like, no, I don't want to kill people. I'm trying to be a kind of a good guy. And then she storms off, goes up into his room, is packing something away. And then literally, the next scene is all of the agents killing themselves. And then she's like, and then he's like, Ria killed the FBI agents. And it's like, hold on a minute. She literally just ran away to get something from your room a minute after you were arguing over the fact that nobody was killing the FBI agents, or that you weren't willing to kill the FBI agents, and then suddenly the FBI agents die. He's not very smart.
Yeah, I mean, there's another point in the movie where, she's it was the thing you talked about before. There's this website with a lot of people who haven't got justice, like a Kira fan page on the internet, and she's saying to Light, we could help these people. And he points out, quite rightfully, that people can just post lies on the internet. And Mia is just like, oh, no way. No, all of this is true. Like, she doesn't give a rebuttal. She's just like, no. It's like, have you seen that meme from Arthur with
you really think someone would do that and just go on the internet and tell lies?
Yeah, that's what I'm like. It's like, how the fuck are you still with her? Like you're meant to be really smart. She wants to kill your dad. She just thinks people never lie on the internet. She's a fucking psycho. Why are you still with her? And so that's one of my problems with her. The other problem is obviously she's introduced in a bad way. Like it would have made sense if this type of character came in when Kira already existed. But it's shit basically. But obviously you've watched the anime with her.
So basically I'll go through that. Actually, I will say one thing just as a side note. She says in the film, she says, I'm a cheerleader. Nothing I've ever done has meant anything until I met you. And I was thinking to myself, like, I know that cheerleaders are capable of having existential crises, but I would think like, being a cheerleader, it takes kind of a lot of dedication and effort and stuff like that. And if you did it, you'd probably be getting some sense of fulfillment out of it. But she's literally just like saying it as if it's just like this annoying inconvenience for her. She's like, oh, I'm a cheerleader. It's so annoying, honestly. Yeah, but anyway, like, even though, I don't know, I mean, it's like, it doesn't seem to, like, you would think that she's kind of popular. I mean, I know that not all cheerleaders are popular, I guess, but I would think that pretty much, I mean, they're a big friend group.
If you've ever seen Bring It On, Michael, the 2000 movie starring, what's she called? The girl from Spider-Man, Mary Jane.
Kirsten Dunst.
Yeah, Kirsten Dunst, yeah. If you've ever seen that movie, you know that cheerleading, it's pretty tough.
Yeah, well, I have listened to the Gomez single, Bring It On. So pretty similar. But yeah, I would assume that it's kind of weird. 'Cause you would think that she was quite popular. I mean, also because she's relatively attractive. I'm allowed to say that, aren't I, Luke? That's not a wrong thing to say. So yeah, she's relatively attractive and she's a cheerleader. You think she'd be kind of popular, and maybe that would be something that would be introduced. Like, she's you could kind of have like how they've got that thing in a lot of like Mean Girls. Really popular girls are sometimes psychos. Oh, that would be good. What if you had I've forgotten her name. What's the name of the queen bee from
Regina?
Regina, yeah. What if you just spliced Regina into this film and she was like, we could help these people.
Yeah.
That's just like the rules of feminism. Anyway.
Hey, that was correct.
Yeah, I know, yeah. I knew it as I said it, but I couldn't really remember any of the Regina lines, to be honest, which is pretty bad for me to say, but whatever. Anyway, but I'll talk about the anime. So in the anime is, in many ways, it does kind of get a bit confused, particularly in the middle. Like, you actually stopped when it was much more like concise, I want to say. It gets very kind of meandering in the middle, and that's actually something which I've seen even like fans of it admit. But basically, there's another Shirogami who's a woman. This is kind of weird, actually. This happens to be the case because obviously Ryuk is a man and this Shirogami is a woman, and it just so happens that the Death Note gets picked up by a woman. Whatever. She drops something down to her, and it gets picked up by Misa, who is a supermodel, and she is also a huge fan of Ryuk. I think because, in fact, I know because I think somebody killed one of her relatives. And
you mean she's a big fan of Kira?
Sorry, yeah. Somebody killed one of her relatives, and Kira killed the person who killed her relatives, and for that reason she worshipped Kira. And her introduction is actually kind of interesting because there's a thing which I don't think you see introduced. Do you ever get introduced to the concept of the Shirogami eyes in the anime?
Yes, I saw that, yes.
Okay, so just for the record, the Shirogami eyes is basically the idea that by just seeing somebody's face alone, you can tell, you can kill somebody based on that because you can see what their real name is with the Shirogami eyes. So in the in the anime, Misa makes a deal. She agrees to get the Shirogami eyes so that she can kind of become a super powerful killer for Light. And she gets introduced. There's an episode where basically loads and loads of policemen suddenly get killed who are just shown on TV, not doing anything. And actually one of the people in the anti-Kira task force gets killed, and everyone's a bit confused. And Light is also confused. He's like, hold on a minute, what's happening? He's confused. And then we find out that there's another Kira doing this who has the ability to kind of tell who somebody is just based on looking at them. And that's good. That was kind of all good, that introduction. Having said that, there's one thing about Misa. She's really annoying. She's like imagine just the worst kind of anime girl. Like one of those terrible copy pastas, like, ooh, senpai, how are you? Oh, I love Light. She bobbles around, everything like that. She's just like really annoying. And what's kind of entertaining is that Light hates her too, and Light is really keen on killing her, which is a really big difference. Light is basically keen to use her because she has the Shirogami eyes, which obviously helps him, but he also just wants to kill her because he considers her to be a liability and also not very intelligent, which makes him worry that she'll give away something or something like that. So Light wants to kill her. Despite that, she does end up sticking around for the entire the entire anime, which is disappointing. I think it would have been much better if he did kill her.
Wow, you're such a misogynist, man.
I know, no. Yeah, well, whatever. Screw you, Luke. But she is written to be annoying, and I think she's supposed to be annoying based on like the way that the anime unfolds. And she ends up in a relationship with Light. But yeah, basically Light he's the complete opposite to Light in the film, because in the anime, Light's basically I guess it's because he's like such a psychopath in the anime. He doesn't really have any interest in women, seemingly. Like there's a scene where she comes down in like a nightdress, and all the other guys are like, "Wow, she's really hot," and like literally has no interest in her. So I get the impression Light's kind of asexual in the anime.
Maybe he's gay.
Maybe he's gay for L.
Or Ryuk.
Yes, he wants to put the L in LGBT.
Yes, that makes sense.
Anyway, yeah. And then the only other thing I had to say is that she also gets taken into custody during one of the even more meandering moments in the series, which I only bring up because I'm actually going to bring it up slightly later and like what happens when she gets taken into custody. But yeah, she gets taken into custody, which I guess proves that Light was right, that she was a liability, because she does get caught much quicker than him. And that's basically it. I mean, that's how she plays out in the anime. So she's really into Light. She's really loyal to Kira. She doesn't know Light personally. She only knows Kira, which I know you mentioned would be a good thing. That's how it works out in the show, and it is better that way. Having said that, she is very annoying in the show. She's not psychopathic in the show. She's more just fanatic. And also, she just is obsessed with Light, while Light has really no interest in her at all, which is obviously kind of almost the exact opposite to in the film where Light is obsessed with her. So there we go. There's all the differences.
Okay, fair
So
enough.
it's a mixed bag, though. I mean, for example, on the one hand, yes, it would be better in the film if they had the whole thing with like the reveal and you don't realize there's two Kiras and then you find out and you kind of learn about her backstory. That was better. Having said that, a lot of what happened with Mia afterwards was a bit like boring because to be honest, I do think that there's a valid argument to be made that her portrayal is kind of misogynistic because she's heavily over-sexualized, portrayed as really annoying, over-emotional, and incompetent. Like, I think you can make a very good gendered analysis of like Mia or a feminist analysis and show that it's a bit problematic. And I can understand also, I get the impression like a lot of guys who are into anime, they're probably not like your world's biggest feminists. And I feel like a lot of them would be like, oh yeah, I want that waifu. In fact, actually, even the guy, I mentioned I saw that review of that guy who was literally just complaining that the film wasn't like the anime. He actually compared Mia to, the two different Mias and Misa, and he was saying how like perfect Misa is in the anime. She's like the perfect woman because she's just so obedient and stuff. I was like, wow, oh boy, talk about problematic. Anyway,
a lot going on there, but yeah, so from what you told me about the Misa character, she does seem like a stereotypical sort of, I don't know,
anime girl.
Yeah, anime girl. That's the best way to put it. Yeah, just not really that smart, attractive, and just annoying.
Yeah, also blonde, which I don't know. Yeah. Everyone talks about like whitewashing. Can we talk about the fact that anime characters, they have so many blonde characters in animes? Like
it's like about the fact that anime characters look very white.
Yeah, it looks like Japanese people haven't looked in the mirror.
Yeah. Anyway, so that character in the anime, you said there are issues, and also there are issues with the character in the Death Note.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, you could make it considerably better by just having like the character from the film slightly less psychopathic and also have the introduction from the anime. So it's kind of like, I think the characterization for Mia in the film is actually slightly better. Still not great. Slightly better. Having said that, the introduction of her and the way she plays into the plot is a lot worse. So there we go. Which, to be honest, is actually surprising because, like I said, one of the big problems of anime is a lot of the time the characters are very one-dimensional and uninteresting. Well, that makes sense. Anyway. Next up,
yes, we're going to talk about Light's philosophy.
This is going to be a big one.
Yeah, this is a biggie. I'll just start first off. I think this is, in comparing the anime to the Netflix adaptation, I think this is the biggest issue with the Netflix adaptation. This is where it is furthest from the anime in terms of quality. Light's philosophy is really interesting in the anime, but the problem is in the Netflix adaptation, one of the reasons why he likes the Death Book, first off, is that he can get revenge on the guy who killed his mother. Now, that is not a philosophy. It's not interesting at all. He's just using it for revenge. Then all of a sudden, like so quickly, he decides he wants to be a god. He talks about it for 30 seconds with Mia, and then he's a god. And it's a general problem with pacing of this movie. They have to squeeze it all in, so everything goes so quickly. But that was just egregious. Like, all of a sudden, he wants to be a god. He wants to be Kira. And he's not shown any intention of being like that at all before that point. And like I said before, one of the reasons why he used the Death Note initially was to enact revenge on a guy who killed his mother. Obviously, comparing it to the Light in the anime, it's such a big margin, like so different. You immediately get a sense of Light's ideology right from the get-go. He thinks the world is rotten. He wants it cleansed. He doesn't have the easy excuse of wanting revenge on someone who killed his mother. But like the Netflix Light also, he just seems to think, oh, I can be a god because he wants to impress his girlfriend. Like, they have some good lines in the anime, like, only I can do it, I am justice. Like, he really does have a god complex.
Yeah.
He understands that humans have a darker side and recognizes that he has a lot of support. Like, it's really interesting. But the Light in the Netflix version is just so vapid. And just, it's such a big gap in their philosophy, and it's one of the reasons why the anime is so much better.
Yeah. Well, also, in the original film, in the film, he doesn't even decide to use it himself. He kind of has to be coaxed into doing it by Ryuk, and Ryuk Ryuk has to point out. In fact, actually, no. The bizarre thing is, Ryuk says in the film, "I'm here to separate the wheat from the chaff." Which is obviously is kind of a way of saying, to discriminate on who's better and who's worse. And I want you to do it. So in other words, Ryuk's saying, this is my motivation. I want you to do it. Which is completely, obviously.
Yeah, in the Netflix adaptation, he kills like 5 people before Ryuk even shows up. And obviously, we
You mean, sorry, you just made it. You meant in the anime. You said in the Netflix adaptation he kills more people.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
So it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, in the anime, he kills 4 people before he even shows up, but in the Netflix adaptation, he has to be coerced into using the book by Ryuk right at the start. So yeah, it's done so much worse in the Netflix adaptation. But go on, what are you going to say?
I will say that obviously I think you could make a criticism that there's no character development for Light in either. And I think the question is, you kind of say, well, does there need to be? And I guess the answer is, well, who knows? I mean, obviously, I do think, for example, I guess one of the problems that should be said actually is that you're talking about how obviously interesting Light's motivation is in the anime, and I agree. I will say this: the Light's motivation in that first episode is an example of one of the instances where a lot of the clunky dialogue and overacting hampers the experience a bit, because he's kind of does literally just say like what his motivation is in very clear, unambiguous terms, which kind of it feels almost like a thesis statement, which is a bit obvious. And but so that's an example of kind of like like we've already said, the delivery and things like that. And I think it would be nice if it was kind of like more subtle, like he starts off kind of showing himself as like a real hero, and then slowly you realize the more kind of god delusions and psychopathy and things like that. I mean, obviously it has to be initially. So I think it would have been nice in the anime if there was a bit more of a slow burn. Obviously, then it has to be said that's not making any excuses for the Netflix thing, because obviously that's even worse, because he literally goes
30 seconds, Michael.
Yeah, he literally goes from. I mean, the thing is, he goes from like I don't really want to kill anyone. I mean, I don't want to kill anyone too. And it's also worth noting that his initial kill is actually more psychopathic. Number one, because I mean, all the guy is doing is kind of like picking on somebody in a reasonably benign way, and he gets killed for that. And obviously, I guess that we could assume in the anime that obviously Light kills people for relatively petty crimes. So it's never really shown exactly how petty he'll go. But the first death he does is of somebody who is holding up a convenience store in like an armed robbery or something. So obviously, in that sense, Light is actually more sympathetic in the anime, because in the movie version he literally just kills somebody who's just a local bully who doesn't really threaten anybody. Also, he chooses these really he's much more willing to use experimental forms of death, like people getting their heads chopped off and people getting hit by cars.
Well, that's like Final Destination, more like, I think.
Exactly, yeah. Whereas of course in the film version, in the anime, we'll talk about this a bit later, but in the anime, almost all the time he kills somebody, it's just via a heart attack. And that makes sense. Anyway, also, but I think this would be a good time to talk about the themes. I kind of put this under here because I did have some things to say.
Yeah.
As you'll remember, when we were talking about what we had to talk about here, I was saying it's so weird that I would say this about such a bad film, but there are themes in the film. The themes, basically, let's just say, are something of a shadow of what they are in the anime. But
a tiny shadow.
Yes, there are obviously there's basic talking about is what Kira is doing wrong. That idea is introduced. I think obviously it doesn't really explore that much. There is also the moment where his office is ransacked by the police. I will say this is a positive. I don't think that happens in the anime, and I think that's kind of an interesting idea of because obviously it kind of, you can see that. I mean, as they say, all cops are bastards. No, but you can imagine there'll be a lot of policemen out there who kind of really hate criminals, and they think, I wish I could just line them up all against the wall and shoot them and things like that. You imagine there'll be policemen out there like that, and therefore, obviously, if Kira comes along and starts killing the criminals, making their job easier, there'd be a lot of policemen like that. So I actually did like how in the film the guy, I actually can't remember his dad's name, not that it particularly matters, but his office gets destroyed by the policemen who are very fond of him, very fond of Kira. And I thought that was a good addition. So well done there. But obviously, apart from that, really, the question is very surface level. It's just the bit where Light's like, what's wrong about killing criminals? That's it. Yeah. There are some more interesting. I guess there's a bit where Al says, for example, you're going to give me this excuse for why you killed 400 people. Do you think you would listen to the excuses of all the people you've killed? I mean, so there are. The thing is, like, it's not hard to explore an interesting theme that's already been set up. So
yeah, exactly. I'm not going to give it any credit for that, because it's literally just taking the themes of the anime and just fucking mangling them and making them as shit as possible.
More like mangling them.
That's great. Well done. Yeah. So I'm not going to give it this Netflix adaptation any credit for that.
I'm not going to give it the small amount of kudos I gave it. Okay. But the other thing is, this one's interesting. I found this one peculiar, mostly because it's completely new, and I'm kind of neutral on it. I was just wondering what you thought about it. there's obviously you haven't seen the end of the anime, and we'll go into the end of the anime at a later point. But the scene at the end where L is deliberating on whether or not he's going to kill Light. He rocks up. He kind of says, "Hey, is there a calculus book somewhere?" Because he works out there's a page hidden in a calculus book, and he knows he can kill people with it. So he rocks up with a calculus, gets a calculus book, and he's like, "I'm going to write Light Turner's name in it, possibly." And it kind of ends ambiguously. I mean, that's the thing that happened.
Yeah.
What did you think, Luke? Did you think that was an interesting exploration of the duality of man? Because L, who has been fundamentally fighting Kira this whole time, ultimately reaches a point where he might perhaps end up using Light's method? Or did you think that was a fundamental betrayal of the character? Because the whole thing that makes the character so interesting is how much they cling to their integrity and their principles.
I'd say the latter, Michael.
I thought so. It was almost as if I was coaxing you into saying that. No, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, I would say it's an interesting thing, and to be honest, like at that point, they've already changed it so much. I guess, like, at least it was like, oh, okay, so that's fun. I should say, like, I like that. The implication was that Light isn't going to win at the end because obviously Light's a psychopath, so good thing. I would have been slightly more disappointed if it just ended with a complete happy ending for Light. I like to think he'll get his comeuppance.
Yeah, the thing is with L, he's just such a shell of himself by that point in the movie that compared to the anime, that you can't really be like, oh, he's. He betrayed. They betrayed
the character. Yeah.
They've already fucking done that before this point. So yeah, I mean, I don't think. I mean, I'd like to think you'd stick as close to the anime as possible, so you wouldn't have him consider that. But yeah, that's just me, I guess.
There's what is it? Oh, I was trying to remember what it was. I was thinking to myself, there's another film like that where they do a remake and they add a twist ending. And I tell you what it was. It was the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes film. Have you ever seen it?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
So at the end, the Caesar, the bad monkey, travels back in time, and Mark Wahlberg goes back to Earth, and the Lincoln Monument is a monkey, and that's the twist, because apparently he went back in time and took over, and now so it's just hilarious.
We're going to be reviewing that in 2 years' time.
Oh yeah, great, brilliant. Oh wow, is it because are they remaking it? Oh, are we doing?
Actually, it's going to be 20 years because it came out in 2001.
Yeah. Anyway, so I want to talk a bit about the themes in the anime. So obviously we've talked about Light's character development in the anime and how it's obviously
it could be better.
The thing about the themes is, like I say, the themes are what made me think that this would be so good for a really kind of more competent TV company. Like obviously Netflix is hit or miss, but like the BBC is generally quite reliable. Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. Yeah, the BBC is quite reliable. HBO is quite reliable. ABC, I think, did Breaking Bad or something. So generally speaking, what's the word? Reliable production company. It would be really good to see a remake of this that kind of really got to a lot of these themes. So I want to talk about some of the themes that were introduced which aren't seen in the movie. And I should say each one of these themes comes with a caveat, which is
how many themes are there?
There's 1, 2, 3, and then like kind of another one which isn't really a theme, but it's something I want to bring up. And to be honest, I should say I could have had more, but I'm just gonna go through it. Okay, so number one, there's this idea that Kira represents what people are too afraid to say, and it kind of reminded me of like when like Donald Trump, I got Donald Trump vibes because he was like the light goes on around, and he's like, Kira does what everyone else is too afraid to do. He literally, I'm pretty sure he says like people are constrained, but I think you would have seen this. I think it would have been in the 6 episodes you watched.
Yeah,
maybe
no,
not.
I remember because I said before that he recognizes that humans have a darker side, and he recognizes that they support him.
Yes.
Yeah, it's literally like fucking Trump supporters saying he tells it how it is. Or UKIP supporters saying that about Farage.
Yeah, exactly. So that idea was, again, and the thing is, obviously, it didn't really explore it, and it could have. So, like I say, each one comes with a caveat it could explore more. But this one's a really good one, actually. So one of the things this film can kind of, the anime can and does to an extent kind of dissect, is that in the quest of the FBI anti-Kira task force to take down Kira, they do a lot of morally compromised stuff themselves. And of course, there's this question of, obviously Kira, he is doing good things, getting rid of criminals using horrendous methods, killing them, without a trial or a jury or anything like that, just killing them extrajudicially. And obviously we can agree that's bad. What's interesting is as the anime goes on, the anti-Kira task force begins to use increasingly immoral tactics themselves to track down Kira. And it kind of creates an interesting kind of contrast. And for example, there's a scene where, and this is why I brought up that they take Mia or Misa into custody. There's a scene where they're pretty much torturing her. In the anime, it's not like the worst kind of torture. It's kind of on a level with waterboarding. They basically have her tied up like blindfolded, so she's completely denied. And there is a bit where someone's like, we can't do this. This is torture. This isn't what we're about. And again, that's a really interesting theme because they're trying to stop Kira because they're like, well, the ends don't justify the means, and yet at the same time they begin to, as the anime unfolds, start to use increasingly objectionable means to justify their ends of taking down Kira. So I'm sure you can imagine that's obviously really interesting. Having said that, there is again the caveat that, again, I still think that, like, the weird thing about that one, actually, that's a weird one because they explore it enough at the time. But what's strange is while I said that it gets, as the anime goes on, that kind of gets abandoned like 2/3 in. Like 2/3 in, they suddenly just kind of become okay again. So there's not really enough of a like payoff for that. Like it gets introduced again and it's not really a big payoff. So again, I would love to see a remake kind of explore that in more detail. And then another one, it's kind of related to a bit of what I've already discussed, but there's a scene where an angry mob literally show up to murder the anti-Kira task force because they're so pro-Kira, and they kind of like show up and they're literally there's a scene in the anime where the masses just get riled up into a huge frenzy, and there's basically a riot where they literally storm the anti-Kira headquarters, and they're like going in there and they're trying to take they want to take pictures of every single person and find out their full names and just let their god Kira kill them. And obviously that kind of shows the idea of how like base and violent humanity can be, and like the idea of mob justice.
Yes.
Again, it's an interesting theme. And my final 0.5 one is that there's a bizarre amount of Christian iconography, despite the anime being in Japan. I don't really know why. In fact, I think at the beginning, I don't know what you thought about this. I couldn't recognize it, but I felt like I should have. When Kira is called upon to, like literally the first scene pretty much, he's called upon to, I think it's an English class where they're learning to read in English. And I'm pretty sure he's reading from a Christian text, although I didn't actually recognize what he said. It sounded very Christian what he's saying, but also even if not, there are several scenes in like, of just churches and things like that. And I guess, it's kind of weird, but I guess you could say, there could have been an interesting exploration of like the religious ideas of justice. And, obviously in Christianity, you have ideas of forgiveness, but in other religions, you might have ideas of, punishing the evil for what they've done, things like that. So, interesting, loads of things they could have explored. And obviously, suffice it to say, in the anime, a lot of these ideas are introduced. They aren't explored as much as I'd like it to be. And I think it would be more interesting if they really delved into them. Having said that, I mean, like I say, the idea that I'm even mentioning themes when talking about Death Note, which was just, without the anime, no one would talk about this kind of stuff. But,
Oh, yeah, no. I mean,
that's standing on the shoulders of the anime.
Yes, definitely. You've said, like, obviously the anime could have done some stuff better in terms of themes. Like, the overall sense I can get from what you've said is, like, they did it, like, 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
Maybe that's fair in terms of exploring the themes. So with the Netflix adaptation, it's, like, 2 out of 10.
Yes.
So,
exactly.
yeah, that is the difference.
But, anyway, I think that's enough, so we can move on to Light's Intelligence.
Yes, Light's Intelligence. So I said Light's Philosophy was my biggest issue with the Netflix adaptation compared to the anime. I think this is my second biggest issue.
Yes.
Fact is, I guess it's Light's character in general, but yeah, part of what makes Light so interesting is his intelligence. Like, I'd only seen 6 episodes, but you can tell he's a really smart guy. He plans everything meticulously. He's very calm.
Also, the way he tests things so methodically, I thought was interesting. The way he kind of like does that thing where he like he gets several different death row inmates to do several different things, and it's like he's able to determine that some of them, it's like one of them he asks to write a message in perfect Japanese, but the person doesn't know Japanese, I think was the answer. So because that person didn't know Japanese, they ended up not being able to do it, and he kind of discovers things like that. Yes,
so that's the thing. He's testing stuff. He's cool, calculated. And then there's the Netflix Light, who immediately tells this girl he's into immediately what this Death Note does. And as you said before, Ryuk seems to be the one who's really controlling what Light does. He has so much bigger influence on Light than in the anime. Like, he's literally like a pet in the anime, which is ironic considering what it says in the Death Note in the Netflix book. Like, Ryuk is not a pet, but he does seem like that in the anime. Light in the anime is clearly the dominant guy. He holds all the cards. He's always in control of the situation, or always striving to be in control.
He holds so many of the cards. He might as well be in Yu-Gi-Oh.
Wow. Or Pokemon. They have no, they don't have cards.
No, it's Pokeballs, but you can. We have Pokemon cards. They don't.
Yeah. So in the Netflix adaptation, when L first talks to Light, he doesn't deny being Kira. And from what I understand, that is one of the major plot lines going forward from what I watched is Light trying to convince Elle that he is not Kira. That is the central part of the first few episodes that I watched, and going on from that. And part of the reason why it's so entertaining, because you got this intellectual like chess match going on between these two characters. But in the Netflix adaptation, they just throw that out. Like, he tells Elle, like, "Oh, arrest me then. Go on then." Like, he doesn't even deny that he's Kira. It's so ridiculous. He also tells Elle about the page in the calculus textbook too. He's just so dumb compared to Light Yagami.
Yes, I wanted to. I decided to put this here because I thought it was the best time to mention it. The one example, like the earliest example we see of, I guess, Light supposed to be being like clever, is also so stupid. It's the line where he like talks about how if the bully hit him, it would technically be child abuse, and it's like the dumbest. It's so funny. And I just thought to myself, like, I don't know, like, I guess that's supposed to be him, like, being, outsmarting the bully in a way, but it doesn't make any sense, like, what he says, because number one, if you punch somebody, that's a crime, like, anyway, literally a crime to punch somebody, so it doesn't matter, but and literally, like, number two, like, why would the guy care? And it's just, like, such a bizarre line. He's just like, well, since you are over 18 and I'm under 18, if you punch me, that would be child abuse, and that would be a crime.
Michael? He deserved to get punched for that line.
Yes,
exactly. Fully punched him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he didn't deserve to be punched before that line, but after that line, he deserved to be punched. Anyway, yeah, I wanted to also bring up. I think I mentioned something which I said I was going to bring up later. Bit of reincorporation. I was talking about how obviously in the anime, Light kills people via heart attacks much more often, and there's actually a really good reason for this. I don't know if this was ever communicated in the few episodes you watched, but basically, what Light does is, because heart attacks are associated with Kira, anytime he wants to kill somebody without it being associated with Kira, he kills them in a way that isn't a heart attack. And that way, because the detectives, they're always looking for heart attack victims, and always saying, who's been killed by heart attack. So occasionally there are scenes where Light's like, well, I want this person to die, so I'll kill them but I don't want people to know that I've killed this person. I don't want people to associate Kira with me killing this person. Therefore, I'm going to write down, kill them some other way. And obviously the detectives don't pick that up. I actually forget whether or not in the anime they ever work out that Kira kills people through means other than heart attacks. I think it's true to say that Light actually keeps up that con for the entire run of the show. And it's obviously really effective because it means he can kill people whenever he wants without them ever suspecting Kira. Obviously in the film version, because he doesn't kill people through heart. In fact, I don't know if he ever kills anybody through a heart attack in the film version. And because of that,
I don't think he does.
Yeah, he doesn't have that card up his sleeve where he can be like, well, if I want to kill somebody and not have it be associated with Kira, I just won't kill them through a heart attack. Because obviously that's not an established thing in this film that it's to do with heart attack. So there we go. That's a problem. I actually had we've already mentioned this. I also have the fact that there's so many scenes where like characters just repeat what happens, and like there was one scene in particular I remember. I can't remember exactly what happens, but Ryuk's like Light does something clever. This is like a criticism of the anime, which we've already kind of got into. I just want to bring it. Light did something clever, and Ryuk's like, "Oh, I see. You did this to confuse them." Blah 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 blah. And it's like, "Yeah, thanks, Ryuk. I got it." So that's just I mean, we've already said it's kind of an annoying thing that happens. I also did want to say there were some instances where I thought Light did make mistakes, which actually I think kind of helped the beginning. And this is in the anime because the obvious example being that he first of all only kills criminals during the school hours and during weekends, and that allows them to work out. It allows Elle to work out that what's it called? That obviously it implies that Kira is probably in school because he seems to only kill people outside of school hours and in weekends. So he kind of makes that conclusion. And I really like that because it was like it makes Light a bit more vulnerable. Like he's not just superpowered. So while we've said Light is really smart and that's a good thing, the one time he's not smart, actually it works out quite well. In fact, to be honest, my main criticism of the anime is that actually as it goes on, characters do become more and more superpowered to the point that literally they do just become like omniscient and they never make mistakes. And that's wrong, but I actually did like how in the beginning of the anime, Light is a bit more vulnerable. He makes a few more mistakes and he slips up a bit more, which makes it more interesting. And the thing is, what's better is that it's kind of understandable mistakes, and not just him being a complete idiot. So there we go.
Right. Fair enough. Good stuff. So now I think we should talk about the rules of the Death Note.
I wrote down Light test the rules for this, but I just thought I'd say that, even though nobody mentioned that.
Yeah, so, okay. In this movie, you don't just control how people die. You also get to do stuff. You also get them to do stuff for you before they die, so you can control them. Now, in the Netflix adaptation, isn't there a time limit?
In both versions there is a time limit, but it's different in both versions. So in the anime, I think it's 6 minutes and 40 seconds.
Yeah, that's what I thought. 6 minutes and 40 seconds.
Whereas in the Netflix version, it's 48 hours.
48 hours, Michael. 48 hours. Like, that to me seems like the big fucking thing here.
Yes.
Like, you buried the lead. You could control somebody for 48 hours.
It's pretty intense. Also, in the, I think I'm right in saying in the anime version, there's an additional rule which essentially says that if somebody's actions while they're under control, I think this is introduced like later, if somebody's actions while they're under control causes somebody else to die, then that basically means that they then don't die themselves because of, it's kind of like the way it works. So they've already killed somebody else through their actions, therefore. All
right.
So yeah, that's just an additional rule, which obviously again adds an additional complication, which I think is just, whereas that doesn't exist in this version, seemingly.
If you can control people for 48 hours, like, why not get the head of the FBI to issue an order in those 48 hours to stop the investigation into Kira? Like, at that time, I think James Comey would have been the FBI director. So obviously everyone knows his name, knows his face. Just get him to do it. Just write his name in the death note and say, hey, guys, stop investigation into Kira. Like,
yeah, well, I think it might be a bit. Actually, I was going to say I think it might be suspicious if he gets killed. Having said that, they have the burning pretense, so obviously you can do that.
You just burn it, yeah.
Yeah.
So then everything's okay.
Oh goodness me, yeah, you're right. Yeah, so basically, you could just. I mean, that's the thing. Like, it's so significantly overpowered in like the craziest way.
48 hours is so long. Like, I don't. Well, obviously they did it so they could give them time for Watari to try and find L or find out his identity. But why not just get Watari to kill L, by the way?
Yes, exactly. Or get his dad to kill L. I mean, obviously, I guess then his dad could potentially die, so maybe that's not a good idea.
Or get a random FBI agent to kill L.
Yeah, just say, hey, Dad, can I come to one of your work parties? I don't know, yeah. It seems, I mean, like, in theory, though, he could write, like, a whole load of names in there and just get loads of them just gunning for L. That'd be pretty good. He could have, actually, no, I was going to say he could have written, somebody to kill L while he was at the cafe, but didn't know anyone's name. I also wanted to bring something else out, actually. I think I said that completely wrong, but anyway, I don't think in the, in fact, I'm pretty sure it's definitely not the case. In the anime, you can't do conditionals. In this one, it's like, it seems to be that he has a conditional one where he says, like, if Mia takes the death note, then she dies, blah, 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 which, again, like, that was never established. So I don't know, I guess it does exist in this version, but I mean, then you have to think, though, well, that adds a whole lot of other possibilities. If you can have conditionals, you could literally just write, if blah, blah, blah commits a crime, then they die, you can just really cover all bases that way. So well done them.
Yeah, no.
In fact, actually, they could have used that to his advantage, because it could have been like, well, hey, how could I have even known that person was going to commit a crime? And obviously, because it's a conditional. But yeah, again, that conditional was a bit of an overpower too.
I'm thinking, yeah, it's 48 hours. Like, what I'd do then, if I was Light, is I'd get I'd look up a really old billionaire, like really old, like no one would think of anything if he died. Just get him to send me on his money. And then die.
Yeah, I think you might need a bit of a money laundering scheme there, though. Like, I think people might get suspicious otherwise. Right. But I like your thinking. Yeah.
I mean, there's just so much you can do with 48 hours, basically.
Yes, 48 hours. It's a long time, and it's definitely. And to be honest, I think even in the anime, it's kind of a bit of a significant power up, and that's only with 6 minutes and 40 seconds to play with. So.
Yeah, well, you can't do that much in 6 minutes and 40 seconds, but.
Yeah.
It's a lot different in the Netflix adaptation. So I think that was the major issue with the rules of the Death Note. That was the major change, which I really was like, what? That makes it ridiculously overpowered. That makes it like you control people for 2 days, being the bigger thing.
Also, it's a relatively minor thing, but I don't think they have the whole burning a Death Note thing in the anime. I don't remember.
They don't, no.
No, yeah, I didn't think so, yeah.
Anyway. Say you can burn a page and then that person's name is crossed off the Death Note. But what if you write multiple names on the page?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. If he just wrote multiple names all at once, he could literally write, like, fill up a page of names and just write blah, 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 becomes obsessed with killing L, and then dies, blah, blah, blah. Just fill it up with that, and then burn the whole page. I don't know. I wonder how that would work out.
It's like they didn't actually think about this movie, Michael, or something.
No, they must have thought about it, Luke.
Oh, God. Anyway, so next up is L.
L,
yeah. This is our penultimate section of the plot. So, okay, this guy is meant to be a smart detective, but he's so much worse compared to the anime version. Like, in the Netflix adaptation, he cries a lot, he's impulsive. Also, he reveals his face to Light. Also thinks about killing Light, which we discussed before. And at the end, I don't really get how he knows it's a magical piece of paper as well. He just have to write the name down. It's like, why would he assume that? It's a pretty big stretch. Surely he would just think, oh, look, these are the people that have died. This proves that he is Kira. This is a list of people he was going to kill. Not, oh, if I write somebody's name on this paper, that means they die.
No, yeah, exactly, yeah. I mean, basically, that's the thing. I mean, there's not really any opportunity for him to do anything that intelligent. I think the best thing I can say is that the scene where he gets the dad to, reveal himself, and therefore, because his dad isn't killed, concludes that Light must be Kira. That doesn't happen in the anime, and I guess that's kind of a clever thing for him to do. So, props for that. But apart from that, nothing else really. I mean, he just there's a lot of assumptions, and basically, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I would say, there were time constraints. So obviously, he couldn't. It would have been hard to fit in all of the working out everything about the Death Note. Obviously, over the anime, they gradually work out how the Death Note works, the Anti-Kira Task Force, over a reasonably long period of time. In this version, they obviously only have an hour and 30 minutes to play with, but then at the same time, either make the film longer or be more efficient with your time. So no real excuses.
Yeah, I do like. Well, I don't like, but the scene with him and with Light and L talking in that what is it, like a shop?
A diner.
Diner, yeah. Let's just say diner. And obviously, Light reveals that he is Kira, which is just great. Also, L reveals his face, which is just great. But like L's talking to Light, and he's saying, "There are no draws in this game, Light. You know that as well as I do." And it's trying to make these two how it is in the anime, like two intellectual heavyweights going at it, and it's just so shit. It just doesn't work at all. So yeah, I just found that line of dialogue funny because they were trying to set it up, but yeah, it just failed.
Yeah. Also, actually, I'll say this about. So I actually have a lot to say about the anime regarding this, but I'll say this positive, which I haven't actually written down, mostly because this is going to be my point where I kind of explain a lot of what happens in the anime, just because very quickly I've got it all written down very efficiently. But I'll say a really big positive, which is that in the anime, one of the ways that L is able to work out a lot of Light, and it's kind of his description he gives, is he says is because he's a lot like Light. So there's a bit where he says, I know that we'll be able to bait Kira this way because Kira doesn't like to lose. And someone says, well, how do you know? And he says, well, I don't like to lose. And it's kind of like you get this impression in the anime that L has a bit of a kind of narcissistic personality disorder himself, and he's sort of very tied up in the idea that he's this fantastic detective. And there are there's a point in the anime where you kind of realize, like, for L, it's more about him proving himself and beating Kira than it is about any idea of actual justice or saving people's lives, which is kind of interesting. Also, while we're at it, Light fucking uses somebody as live bait in the I think it's the second or third episode where he has that guy pretend to be Al, and then he gets killed.
And that was L. You mean L?
Oh, sorry, yes. Oh, yeah. Sorry. That's what I meant. Yeah. Goodness, it's kind of annoying they've got two names that start.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Couldn't L be called like P?
P. So he uses live bait and he dies. So that's pretty. Obviously, actually, that should be mentioned. I didn't mention some of the themes, but just for the record, Japan has the death penalty, and I just think it's worth noting that's something else which is kind of like you could explore if you were making it set in Japan or America, where they also have the death penalty in some places. But whatever.
Anyway, so Michael, we've discussed L, we've discussed Light, we've discussed the Death Note.
Oh wait, hold on. No, I need to talk about all the stuff to do with L and what happens in the anime.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
Okay. So, I've written it down very efficiently to kind of go through it as quickly as possible. So the government sends Texas on him. Then 6 episodes in, L already. So I thought this was interesting because you brought this up. About 6 episodes in, I couldn't remember this, but I'm guessing seeing as you remember this, and it must have been within 6 episodes. L already has Light as his top suspect, and has actually already communicated to Light that he is the top suspect. And this is about with 30 episodes to go in the series. Now, I hate to say it, Luke, but like I say, the plot is very meandering towards the middle, and part of the problem I think is that they do blow their load a bit too early. in the anime. I think I have a theory that this is for like kind of political reasons, or like I don't know if political is the right word, but like economic reasons. So in other words, they get loads of the plot out of the way, like they get the plot going really fast early on, so that people are hooked on it. Because obviously if the plot's too slow, people might get a bit bored. So they get the plot really going really fast, and then it kind of slows down a lot, and it's actually does get a bit meandering. And Light actually starts working on the Kira investigation. And then Light basically does this whole thing where he agrees to go into custody to prove to L that he isn't Kira. But before he does that, he hides the Death Note. Now, do you remember, Luke? I said that if you relinquish control of the Death Note, you lose all memory of it. So basically, he loses all memory of the Death Note, and he starts to be really sincere when he's like saying, I don't know what you're talking about. I've got nothing to do with it. And because he actually genuinely doesn't remember it, L kind of gets tricked. One of the weird kind of confusing things about that is that for some reason, Light inexplicably starts to act like he's no longer a psychopath, even though it had already been communicated in the anime that he was a psychopath irregardless of the Death Note being there. So it kind of doesn't make sense to him.
You mean regardless?
I thought it worked either way, actually, but I like saying irregardless. Okay, yeah.
All right.
Regardless of the Death Note being there. Yeah, so, and obviously, so it doesn't really make any sense. But anyway, so then, okay, the Death Note gets used by a bunch of evil businessmen to take out their competition, and Light is acquitted based on the fact he was locked up. And he also adds, this is kind of interesting, he adds a fake rule to the Death Note that says that if somebody who has ever used it before then ceases to use it for 13 days, they'll die. So since he was locked up for more than 13 days, they conclude he can't be Kira. And one of the kind of big, like, major reveal twist moments is when L works out that this was a fake note, a fake rule, because obviously that rule was part of the reason why they concluded Light couldn't be Kira. So then they start investigating his business, and, like, it has to be said, like, a load of meandering happens around this whole plot. Like, it's actually not that good at this point. It gets better, kind of, but then Light gains control of it, and he's really keen to kill Light, and he's really keen to kill L, and he actually does kill L. This is a big shocker. He kills L around episode 22, I think. So L dies with 15 episodes to go. And again, this seems to be something which a lot of even fans of the anime and the manga admit is like a bit of a problem, because then it flashes forward 5 years, and we find out that L has been replaced by somebody who is very similar to L. So it kind of seems like very strange that they made this decision anyway. And also, this new replacement for L then immediately communicates to Light that he is again the primary suspect for being Kira. And Light has become the head of the Japanese division for finding Kira at this point, and his own minions begin to suspect him. So again, it's it's kind of going. It's to be honest, it does go a bit off the rails of like characters dying and then being replaced by people exactly like them and things like that. And then there's the thing which is never brought up where Light kills this woman. And this is like a nitpick, but there's a thing. Did you ever see this? So Light kind of he murders a detective who's following him. Did you see that?
Yes.
And then the wife of the detective starts investigating. Did you see that?
I saw the beginnings of it.
Okay, yeah. So basically, he kills her, and the crazy thing is she had actually worked for L before, and despite the fact that she worked for L before, and her husband was investigating Kira, and she went to the police station, and while she was at the police station, she met Light, and L seems to know all of these different things. It's never really brought up as like, he never actually brings that up as like a reason to suspect Light, which is very strange. And you'd think that it would be a potential if you looked into it for him to find like a smoking gun. He doesn't. I don't know why. And then the other thing is, it kind of gets a bit farcical how much they suspect Kira. How much they suspect Light, because it's literally like you're watching an anime for 30 episodes, which is like 30 times 20. What's that, Luke? That's like 600 minutes. And in every single episode, it's like, I suspect that you're Kira, Light. And Light's like, nah, I'm not. And that's it. And the other thing is, I mentioned before how like Light is a bit more kind of, he makes mistakes in the beginning. And then I said, but actually they get more overpowered as the anime goes on. That does happen. And it kind of did annoy me. Like the anime does get worse in that like people become more omniscient. Like there's more moments. The assumptions do get slightly more outlandish, and they never make any wrong assumptions, and they never like go down the wrong path, which is very strange, because you think if they're trying to pad out this 37 episode long thing, they'd have a few moments where they go down some rabbit holes and stuff like that, but really they don't really go down many wrong paths. So yeah, I don't know. Basically, there we go. That's a complete description of the entire plot, which I just thought I'd fit under L because it's all very much related to him.
Okay, yeah, so obviously this wasn't meant to be a review of the anime, but seems like you've done that anyway. Yeah,
well, I like to give people 2 for the price of 1. And yeah, so now, the final.
Yes, it's the final act of the Netflix adaptation. So obviously this isn't in the anime. It's when Light decides to go to the Ferris wheel, and yeah, a lot of shit goes down. So first off, I just want to say the chase scene beforehand goes on for far too long. Somehow Elle manages to find him just running about the streets of Seattle. And I don't think Seattle is that small a place, Michael.
Nope. You can take entire helicopter rides around it.
Yes, as we've seen before. So, okay, then his Light's plan. It doesn't make sense, and it's also far too smart for this character that we've seen so far.
I would say it's simultaneously dumb and yet too smart for Light.
Yeah, which is incredible. They've managed to fuck it up that much. Apparently, you can also do something with a death in terms of, like, you can have a conditional death. So you have to take the book, and then she dies.
Yeah, exactly.
Been established. Like you said that before, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, and it's definitely completely out of nowhere and very convenient.
Yes.
Also, actually, I have to point this out. What if she didn't accept the book and she was like, "Okay, Light, I will run away with you." I mean, at that point, he's threatened somebody with a gun to get up onto a Ferris wheel, which is, I mean, yes. I don't know. I mean, I guess. And also, it's worth noting, it seems like the guards are really, despite the fact they're supposed to be protecting him, they seem very ready to kill him, so I don't know.
Yeah. So he can somehow destroy the Ferris wheel then, because obviously part of his plan is, if Mia takes the book, then she she dies by falling out the Ferris wheel. And remember, one of the rules is each death has to be physically possible.
Yes.
As spelled out in the beginning. And somehow this is physically possible. Mia manages to grab a page out of the book and throw it into the fire. Like, Light can manipulate what a piece of paper does. And what if there wasn't a fire there as well? I mean, why not just write Mia's name down in the death book, saying she burns your name on the page before she dies? Why not that? Yeah, and then if you don't want her to die, then burn her page after. If you want to keep her alive. Like, I don't know, does he want Mia to die? I don't know. Like, this is what I mean, like, it's the whole plan, it's too smart for him, but again, it doesn't make sense. So what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it seems very convoluted.
Yes,
and
good word for it.
I mean, I guess they tried, so well done there.
They tried. Wow.
But it's. I mean, yeah, like, that's the thing. There's really not much you can say apart from the fact that it is just very unnecessarily complex, and you think to yourself, I mean, why didn't he just? Oh no, he couldn't have done that. Actually, I was going to say, why didn't he just tell Elle to kill himself? That wouldn't work at all. But yeah, I mean, like, also, why on the Ferris wheel? I mean, like, why not just next to a fire? Why didn't he just say, they meet up, and what's her face? She lights a fire. She puts my name in it, and then she just steps in the fire. And that would say, because the thing is, like, think about how easily he could have been caught, and then his whole plan would have been like, at the end, like, okay, yeah, here's the thing. At the end, he's like being like, do you want to hear my genius plan, Dad? And the plan about how I saved, did everything really right, and I was so proper and correct and all that stuff. And Dad's like, yeah, sure. But he's like telling the story. He was so close to being caught by Elle. The only reason he escaped is because the guy who happened to be there happened to be a supporter of Kira. So yes. He's talking about this plan like, oh yeah, I'm so smart. If that hadn't have happened, he would have just, been arrested by Elle, if not shot. And then he'd, be screwed. And it was all because he had this bizarre meeting place, which was completely unnecessary.
Yes,
so, yes.
I know. Also, he decides after he gets put in the water to get put in a coma.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, nobody suspects he is Kira. The only one who does is Light, and he
Elle. We keep making this. It's fine. We keep making this mistake, so I can't hold it against you.
Elle.
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
So the only one who does is Elle, but obviously he's been arrested, and he's not. His superiors aren't happy with him, and they threaten him with arrest.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that. So why does he need to get put in a coma? Why does he need to do that?
I wish I could say, Luke. I really, really wish I could say.
Also, did you say this before? Why can't Light rip out his own name out of the death note and burn it?
Yeah, I did, and it's not been answered, no.
No, I mean, maybe you can't because you didn't write it, but...
That's not established.
It's not established, that
adds even more questions to what's the benefit of being an owner of a notebook, because obviously...
What's the benefit? Like, you can talk to Ray, maybe that is the only benefit. So yeah, that's that last scene.
Yeah, well, I actually did. I can really quickly talk about the final confrontation in the anime because I think it's interesting.
All right, go on.
So actually, I will say this: it's quite disappointing, and it's kind of interesting, kind of disappointing. Like one of the problems, and again, this is another fact. It's like a meme in the Death Note fan community. I went onto the Death Note subreddit, and there's like one of their like highest posts is literally like a clip or like a panel from the manga, and it's Light and L, and one of them's like, I knew you knew. And everyone's like, I knew you knew I knew. And everyone's like, I knew you knew I knew you knew. And that's literally like what the final act is like. So I'll tell you basically what happens. It starts off very clever. So essentially, Light has a new follower. And he agrees to meet L's replacement, who we'll just call L because he's completely indistinguishable from L. So he agrees to meet L. And
call him P, Michael.
And while he's there, he arranges, for his assistant who has the Shirogami eyes to look in and write down everybody's name. Okay. Sounds pretty clever. So Light's like, then I'll kill everyone. Because obviously he'll write everyone's name in, and then they'll all be dead. However, L has seen this coming. So what he's done is, and this was set up earlier, he replaced one of the pages, he replaced the notebook, so the notebook doesn't actually kill the people who are being written in it. And therefore, this guy, he's not actually writing down, he's not actually going to kill them, he's just going to write down all these names, and therefore, when they find out that Light's name isn't in there, they'll know that he is Kira, because obviously, it sounds quite convoluted, but here's the thing, and then Light is like, I knew that you changed it, so I changed it back. And then L's like, I knew I changed it, so I double changed it back, which, it has to be said, it's kind of annoying, because if they would have just stuck it at the basic level of okay, yeah, we tricked you, Light, you've been tricked, we actually have not been killed because we switched the notebook just that one time, but instead, for some reason, completely, I don't know why, it's just yeah, I knew you knew, so I knew you knew, and I knew, and it's just too much, it's bizarre. And
4D chess, Michael.
Yeah, I will say that I actually did really like, it was exactly what I wanted to happen, because as you know, I'm a really big fan of the Japanese film 13 Assassins,
yes.
Where at the end, our main bad guy, he gets stabbed by a katana, and he basically just crawls around on the floor in the mud like a really pathetic person and basically just pleads for his life. And it's a really satisfying death for him because he's had a god complex the entire film. This is 13 Assassins. And basically pretty much the exact same thing happens in this. Light gets shot in the stomach, and he just, crawls around the floor, screaming about how he's a god and how he'll be worshipped and stuff like that. And it's really satisfying because, it's just yeah, take that, Light, you dickhead. So I'll give him props for that. I mean, that was a much more satisfying death than, what happened in the thing. So yeah, and so a compliment sandwich in a way. It could have been good, but then it was a bit overly convoluted. But then I did like how Light eventually died. So whatever. Anyway, but I would say actually you really don't need to watch the anime. So that's my overall review of the anime. As much as it's really popular, I would genuinely just say, hopefully at some point a competent company will pick up the story and make a really, really interesting kind of thing that has a slightly tighter plot and a slightly more interesting acting and characterization and dialogue, and also explore some themes in more detail, and then maybe you can watch that, but don't hold your breath. Either way, basically I've already given away everything that happened in the anime anyway, so there's no point watching it.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking...
I just realized I haven't placed this in my thingy. I need to get on that quick.
Okay, well, I guess you kind of concluded on the actual anime, and now it's time to conclude on the actual movie that we were meant to be reviewing.
Exactly, yeah. I would give the anime a 6 out of 10, so not actually that good, yeah. Well, the thing is, okay, so I should say, the opening is very good. I honestly would say that you kind of did the right thing by watching. I think there's probably a perfect point
I always
where
do the right
you could, where you could... there's a perfect point where you can kind of watch the first couple of episodes and then watch the last couple of episodes, and except for the fact that a completely new person is now L, you probably improve the experience, because the middle really does let it down. So that's basically why it's a 6 out of 10. Yeah, but so the opening is much better. That's the answer. So that's why you're so surprised. Just for the record, you're surprised because the opening is much better, and then eventually it does get much more meandering and farcical. Unfortunately.
Okay. So I guess I'll conclude on the actual movie, Death Note. So I think the only good thing, we haven't brought this up yet, Michael, but I think the only good thing you can say about this movie is the camera work. Apart from that, I think...
Oh, yeah.
Because there were some interesting shots.
Yeah, I guess it was kind of a rather artistic film. I mean, that seems like a weird word to use, but it was like there were conscious decisions being made by the director. It's not like one of those films where it's like a TV movie.
Yeah.
So there we go.
I noticed that a few times. It's that's an interesting shot. So yeah, props to the director for that. But apart from that, it's all bad. This beloved anime has been completely bastardized, and it just proved the point of all of those who didn't want to get it made. I mean, Anime fans, Michael, why do they like anime?
Is that a serious question?
Yeah. I mean, what do you think the actual reason is?
Because they like I don't know. It's I feel like there's an obvious thing you're going to say. So
well, I just think they. I mean, if Japanese people like the anime, it's because it's their culture. Why do like Westerns like anime?
Because they like Japanese culture.
Yeah. They're weebies. Yeah, but like what I think the major reason, or one of the reasons they'd say, is that it's smarter.
Oh
than standard Western like movies or cartoons or whatever. And this movie reinforces their superiority over American films. It really does. So yeah, I mean, it's really dumbed down. It's not smart at all. And the people who made this clearly thought that all teenagers are stupid, and it had to be an edgy teen horror to work, like Final Destination. And yeah, they ruined what you gave a 6 out of 10 for the anime. But
yeah,
again,
well, it's worth noting, it should be said that the bits I gave a 6 out of 10 are all of the stuff which is like very tangential and not really related to the main plot. So if I were just ranking the main plot and the stuff relating to the main plot, I would give it a higher review. So basically, the thing is, they did themselves a huge service by not actually adapting any of the middle stuff, which is the stuff that's the most disappointing. So in that sense, they kind of basically, didn't even adapt most of the stuff that brings this film down. That's the funny thing.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like, you already had such a strong material, and like you said, it does get meandering, but you didn't need to make it be meandering in your movie. You have just taken the good bits, which there are a lot of good bits, which I did like, especially in the beginning, from the anime, and put it into your movie, and it could have been really good. They decided not to do that, and yeah, I think I have to give it a lower rating than I otherwise would have, just because of the fact that the source material was so good in terms of the themes and the characters. And obviously, you say, it gets it goes a bit off the rails.
More disappointing,
yeah. But they, like I said, they didn't need to do that. The actual the actual point of Death Note is really interesting. And so, yeah, the fact that they ruined it, I think you need to give them a lower rating than they otherwise would have if this had just been an original movie.
Yeah.
I think that's fair to say. I don't know if you agree with that, but
I do think that's a reasonable logic. I don't know if it'll affect my rating, but I'm kind of in two minds about my rating right now.
So, bearing that in mind, I think, Michael, I am going to give this. I'm debating whether to give this a 2.5 or a 3 out of 10. You know what? I'll give it a 2.5. I'll give it.
That's not bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, that's not. I was going to say it's not that bad. That's really bad. Yeah. I don't know why I said that's not that bad. All right. Anyway, so as you'll remember, Luke, what I said at the beginning, well, not quite at the beginning, but I said relatively early, and as I said, the thing about this is it's not bad because the anime is perfect and it failed to accurately adapt this perfect anime. Rather contrary, it's bad because the anime, in my opinion, was screaming out for a slightly more streamlined adaptation. Because, like I say, my biggest criticism of the anime was that it was meandering. That there was points where it was like things were happening too fast, and then suddenly it slowed down, stuff like that. So turning this into a feature-length film is the perfect opportunity to address that problem. So in a way, they had a golden opportunity. And the thing is, you can either go one of two ways if you were going to make this. You could either adapt it into a very long TV series that really explored
which is what I would have done.
Yeah, which is what I would have done. Explored all of the themes and the character development, things like that, in detail, which, Netflix, as far as I know, Luke, I don't know if you know this, but I'm pretty sure they're famous for making, like, series, TV series, like Stranger Things and stuff like that. So they should have done that. But to be fair, actually, if you make a feature-length film, that works out quite well too, because, there is actually a relatively short story contained within this anime, which could be communicated quite well. If they would have given themselves an extra half an hour to play with and been significantly more intelligent in what they've done and not made loads of horrible, stupid decisions, then they would have been in a really good situation, I think it's fair to say. Now, where would I place this? I think, here's the thing, okay? The only thing which holds this film up slightly is that it is more enjoyable to watch because it's so bad. And that's the thing. It is, there's having said that, and I kind of go up and down. I'm thinking to myself, one of the things I've got written here, for example, is Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, which is really kind of boring. in a lot of places and a lot longer and a lot more tedious. Having said that, I'm going to put it below Dawn of Justice. My main question is, I've got it around Ghostbusters, Daddy's Home 2, and I Feel Pretty. I think I want to say that I'm going to put it, okay, this is my big thing, below Ghostbusters and above Daddy's Home 2. Obviously it doesn't really matter. The important thing is, like, it's fifth from the bottom, so not very well read at all.
Okay, by the way, I changed it to a 3 because I gave Passion of the Christ a 3, so I'm not having it be lower than Passion of the Christ, so I'm bumping it up to a 3.
All right,
so there you are.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's it then.
Yeah, well, that's why I didn't want my beloved Ghostbusters. Seeing as I'm such a feminist shill, I couldn't have this be worse than Ghostbusters.
Yeah, Ghostbusters is a 3 for me as well.
Yes.
So anyway, that is that for Death Note. This has been quite a long one, but I guess we had to go into it. It's one of the most infamous adaptations of a Japanese film. And yeah, there's obviously Ghost in the Shell, which was last year, and this year there's Detective Pikachu. So what is your prediction for Detective Pikachu, Michael, on the Rotten Tomatoes thing?
Well, last time I guessed high and I was right. This time I'm going to guess relatively low. I'm going to guess 72.
72. I'm going to guess 78.
All right. I feel like you might be right, but whatever. We'll see. I kind of just want the trend to continue. Why not?
By the way, you've won Avengers Endgame because it's 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, and you said 85, I said 83, so you've won that. So congratulations.
Yeah. It feels like a very hollow victory, seeing as you're the one who actually bothered to go see it.
So yeah, I think we're tied like 2-2, by the way.
Yeah, good. Okay. I'll tell you what's the most important thing though, Luke. Thank God that we did decide to check whether or not it was recording the first time we did this, and we discovered that it was not recording. Only an hour into our original recording, because otherwise this would have been a really long one to make that mistake for. So obviously it's annoying that we had to record some of this, but or re-record some of this, but count your blessings, because we could have had to have recorded a lot more. So anyway.
Yeah, that's it then.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'll ask about what we're doing next week, won't I?
Yeah, what are we doing next week, Michael?
We are doing... Oh, there we go. We're doing John Wick 1, John Wick Chapter 1, and John Wick Chapter 2.
Because of John Wick Chapter 3.
Oh, yeah, because of John Wick Chapter 3. Yes.
So yeah, join us next week for that. We have been selecting and reflecting on Death Note and a bit of the anime as well, because of the release of Detective Pikachu, a Japanese anime that has been adapted into a live-action American film. So yeah, join us next week for John Wick 1 and 2. Who have you been, Michael?
I've been Michael.
And I've been Luke. See you next week. Goodbye.
Goodbye.